Do you ever want to dive deeper into the Bible, but you just don't know where to begin, or struggle to feel like you even have the time? When you read the Bible, do you get frustrated because you know there's so much more in there? You just have no clue how to get it out? Or maybe you want to know the Bible better, and you're looking for any resource to help. Then this is the podcast for you. Welcome to the Context and Color of the Bible. We're sisters. I'm Veronica.
I'm Erica.
And we love to study the Bible, and we love to help others understand it better. When it comes to our own study of Scripture, we have found that in bringing back the context of Scripture, it adds so much to our understanding. It actually adds color to the black and white pages of the text.
All right, so I'm excited. I'm going to start because I was just telling Lois before we hit record, she has been on my bucket list for the last 5 years to have Lois Tverberg on our podcast. Woohoo! Yes, because as we say, if you've listened to our podcast for a while, Eric and I are always referring back to start with Lois's books. She has Reading the Bible with Rabbi Jesus, Listening to the Language of the Bible, Walking in the Dust of Rabbi Jesus, Sitting at the Feet of Rabbi Jesus. And I'm sure there's more. I just don't have them all.
Great. I always joke that my next book is going to be Jumping in the Jordan with Rabbi Jesus. We've been wearing out that motif, so we got to do something that's not Rabbi Jesus now. So yeah.
But it's a good motif.
That's right. Yep.
Yes. So we want to just officially say welcome. Lois.
Thank you
for joining us.
Thank you. Glad, nice to Zoom with you. I always, I've written about how there are many, talk about you bless the Lord at all times. And one of my books, it talks about blessings. And I used to say, I think we always should bless the Lord even for Zoom, because honestly,
it's amazing.
It's like Star Trek. I can right there on the other side of the screen on the Star Trek. Wow. So I thank the Lord for the opportunity to Zoom with you. That's great. So
yeah. So let me just start with, do you want to give a quick bio who you are to some of our listeners if they're not familiar with you? Or
okay, sure. I live in Western Michigan. Not that far away from you folks, but I actually have a PhD in biology, and my undergrad major was in physics. I'm a nut. I'm just a nerd at heart. The Lord made me nerdy. And I'm glad I claim that. And I grew up in a Lutheran family. A nerdy Lutheran family, and we had tons, just like here, we had big bookshelves full of Christian books, but Lutherans struggle with their Old Testaments. They don't know what to do with them. They have kind of poor ways of understanding things.
I'm sure it's not just the Lutherans, though. I feel like
everybody, lots of people, pretty much all of Christianity is struggles with what is this first 3/4 of the Bible? I don't get it. I mean, we all struggle like that. Everybody struggles like that, and so I realized that. And so I struggled from like that even as a kid, but it was, I came to Michigan to teach biology at Hope College in 1995. And at my church, they were having a series in 1996 with Ray Vanderlaan, who I think you folks have heard. Have you met him in person? Do you know him?
I haven't. I have briefly. My husband went on a tour, one of his.
Okay. Yeah. And I went with him to Israel, and he's a friend even now. But he was teaching in my church. He was teaching a series that went 30 weeks in the fall and the spring, every Thursday night. You can actually hear audio versions of it online. But it was a very basic introduction about the land and cultural and context of the Bible. And I have to say that absolutely knocked my socks off and got me fascinated. And so I was in he did a little upper level class where with 25 people in my church who were willing to read heavier duty books and to write papers. And we read Brad Young's book, Jesus, the Jewish Theologian, and we read Jerusalem Perspective. And it was like the Holy Spirit grabbed hold of me, and I got so excited and fascinated. I started writing articles, and then some friends and I started this little ministry called the Getty Resource Center, and I started writing a website. We started doing websites when they first invented websites. It tells you how old I am. Woo, no, it was my nerdy other friend. His name is Bruce Okama, who you see on my listening book, The Okamas, and I started teaching little things in our churches around our area, writing things on websites. And then we also started inviting scholars to speak for us. And then we had trips to Israel. And so we got started back around, it was in the year 2001 that we got started. So and then after I got started with my first little book, Listening to the Language of the Bible, then a woman contacted me named Ann Spangler. And she is in the book publishing industry. She's what's called a literary agent. And that means they're people who kind of look for authors and represent them to publishers. And they're looking for voices that speak in an area that people are interested in. And so she had said, boy, a lot of people like this Jewish stuff. Lois, would you like to work with me on some books and so she still is a very good friend of mine, but that's how I got started writing my first book of big publishers sitting at the feet. And she's great, and we're still really good friends. So
nice.
There you go.
So then that's kind of looking back at where you started. Where are you going? Like, what projects are you working on right now?
Where am I going? Yes, I have a fun project that it might not quite sound related, but it's actually totally related. When I first started my first Bible study, when we started teaching, we were doing a Torah study, and Lutherans went, oh, yuck, who wants to read the Torah? I still can hear my own bad attitude. I wouldn't want to study that. But we had, but Bruce actually invited this guy he met at church. It was a pastor from Uganda, and who was teaching or he was actually studying at our seminary. And what was interesting is that as we were studying we were talking about Jewish context all the time. It was surprising how useful he was. He kept saying odd things like, somebody got out their shofar, they got in Israel and they're blowing their shofar. And his comment, he goes, oh yeah, we use that. We blow that on the New Year's. Oh. Do you guys know? Do you know who else blows that on the New Year's?
The Jews do, don't they?
Yes, they do. Yes. Yom Teruah. Rosh Hashanah, it is traditional which is the Jewish New Year, and they blow the shofar. And what's interesting, I don't think, I have to look that up. I have to do a little research on that, but I believe the blowing of the shofar is not explicitly referenced in the Bible. It might have been something that they got from the wider culture, because many cultures have a New Year's celebration. Everybody has a New Year's celebration, and they like blowing shofars. And so his name was Titus. He kept saying these fascinating little things that are kind of like the biblical context, because a lot of us don't know where our Africa references, but he's from Eastern Africa. Egypt, below Egypt is Sudan, and below that is Uganda. And he's actually from South Sudan and Uganda. So he's actually not very far. And if you look in your Bibles, you find that Cushites there are
Ah.
Cushites are mentioned more than any other peoples, and there are promises that the Lord will bring his people from Cush. And remember, the very first Gentile convert to become a believer was the Ethiopian eunuch
Oh,
in Acts.
yeah.
And so what's interesting, and so Ethiopia tends to mean Africa. And in Greek translation, that's the word they use for Africa. So
Okay.
anyhow, I'm working with not Titus, he's a good friend, but another friend of his who's even smarter. She got a PhD in Old Testament, and she has been teaching Bible at Uganda Christian University, and she and I are working on a book. She's not Jewish,
Mhm.
but in many ways, she's actually more aware of biblical world realities like polygamy.
Mhm.
Her husband had her husband's, her and her husband are both Anglican priests, but her husband's father had 3 wives. That
Oh.
meant that Millie had 3 mothers-in-law.
Oh.
And they very much still understand the idea of levirate marriage,
Mhm.
where if a man dies, that the family needs to arrange for some other brother in the family to take her on as his wife, so that she can have an heir, so that she can stay on the land. Because if you don't have children that are going to inherit the land, the woman will actually be, hate to say it, forced to give up her children, who are the husband's family children, has to go get another husband, because she's not allowed to be on their land if she's not raising children who are going to inherit their land, because she's not going to have somebody else's children on their land. So so that's a long story, but so what we're going to be asking is, how can some of their, I'd say, biblical world insights help us understand our Bible better? And there are a lot of places where, like, we read about let's see, the tribes of Israel, that you have the Leah and Rachel, and they have maidens. They're Bilhah and Zilpah, and they're like, what? Are they slaves? Did they beat them every night?
Right?
And Millie says, no, actually, everybody has maidens, and every woman has probably been a maiden for a while before she gets married. In her culture, do either of you two have children?
Yes.
Yeah. I have 3
Okay.
and she has 5.
Okay, yeah, okay. Do you remember when you first had your first one, how stressful it was?
Yes.
And how much you wish you could have had another pair of hands to help you out?
Yep.
Well, remember, Africa is a communal place, like in the biblical world. And so in a community among where my friend Millie, her name is Millie Erema Maturu, where she comes from, when they know that you're going to have your first baby, somebody will send their daughter over to be your
Like a helper.
Yeah, help, exactly. And
that is a great idea.
Doesn't that sound great?
Yes,
it helps mom,
and she gets training.
That's right. And she's not with her mom, so she has to learn how you do things. She has to, you treat her like your own children. And then the only reason why we don't is because girls go to school here. And where Millie comes from, when she was, actually she grew up, they did have school then, but back in the biblical world, your schooling was your training with other families. And so I'm like, what a good idea.
I know.
So it's actually not, so when you read things, you're like, I can't believe how they exploited women. Actually, no. No.
So what I like about that is that's a real person with real experiences going, I don't see it the same way you do. Let me share how my country, how our area does it.
This is how we read it. And so when I was telling her, I was reading some things that feminine. I don't
Yeah.
want to be scholars were reading, like Abraham and Sarai and Hagar, and she actually gave a paper at the big scholar meeting saying, "No, you're reading it wrong."
Wow.
This is and then she when she went back to Uganda and was talking at a big conference with a bunch of pastors, she told about how the Westerners were reading it, and they all laughed, like, "Oh, what stupid people!" So, so,
Probably.
so anyhow, not to take too long, but when she studied at Western Seminary here in our area, which I believe that Erica's husband Brian went to Western Seminary at all, or not? No, he just went to JUC. Okay.
Yeah, we did a section at Grand Rapids Theological.
Okay, gotcha. Well, the little seminary here in my town, Holland, Michigan, she studied here, and when she was in Old Testament class, her professor, there was one day he was talking about Abraham, how God gave him a vision to take it's a heifer and a ram, and cut them in two, and they're going to make a covenant. And Millie says, "Yes, my grandfather has done this, and this is how it works." And so, yeah, she can explain it down to, okay, this is why this is the part of the right the right hind leg is the honored portion that you give. And there's places where Bible translators like, we don't quite understand what that is. And you have to ask your Africans, they'll explain that to you, what that is. And so she kept doing that all semester, and he started asking her to lead class occasionally when they were talking about gleaning and Ruth. And she goes, "Yeah, we still get gleaning." Actually, she's like, "Why don't you have gleaners here?" "Oh, I see you're so wealthy. That's why you don't have gleaners." So she's wondering why we aren't like that. But his comment to her was, "Millie, it's like you read the Bible as an insider."
Yeah.
And so what I find is that my African friends are often very interested in the Jewish ways of looking at things because they're much closer to their ways of looking at things. And often they're not trying to be Jewish, but they're kind of they could be representing the wider ancient world and how it's it's been a few thousand years, so you can't guarantee everything, but in some ways you're like new moon celebrations. That's a wider ancient world thing, and they still do that in Uganda. And so there's lots of biblical realities that still exist even now. That she can explain all the hardest passages to you. She can tell you about sacrifice, and that's what we're writing our book on. So
your book is the two of you together, going through
Right.
different passages of scripture, shedding
Right.
the light. That will be fascinating.
That's it. That's exactly it, is that she and I are working on right now. Tentatively, it's with Zondervan. We have a contract, and it is, we haven't completely pinned down the title, but reading the Bible as an insider is my
I like that one.
Okay, I like it. I know that they say, well, then it sounds a lot like your other one, Reading the Bible with Rabbi Jesus. Yep. Well, I get it, but
I just wrote that down in my notes. Reading with an insider. I love that perspective.
you get it. And some people, one person said, "I don't know, insider, that sounds so elitist." Like, well, you do realize that we're talking about being in poverty with no education. That's the biblical world,
Right?
Part of the reason why we don't understand it is because of our wealth. That's one of the major things that you will, first thing I get from Millie is, "Oh, that's why you don't get it, is because you're so wealthy."
Wow.
Jesus said that, and that's the thing that you keep popping up. So
when is that book supposed to come out?
It is
Roughly.
fall of 2027. I am working on it.
I gotta wait.
I know it's so long. I know it's okay. Here, let me tell you what is coming up before then. Also, Lord willing, but Ray Vanderland's videos, they were produced by Focus on the Family.
Right.
right. And Focus invited me to come out, and I made some little videos with them, which they haven't put up yet, but they also worked with me on making a updated version of my Listening to the Language of the Bible book. And that's supposed to come out this fall. And
Nice.
it'll have the same title, but I guess it'll have a new cover, which I have not seen yet.
Okay.
And so if you want to know what's coming out, that's my next one.
Okay.
Is my Listening to the Language of the Bible, my updated version that will be published by Focus on the Family, and Tyndale is that book. So that's
Okay.
what's going on. Yep.
Are you doing new words? Or are you just like, okay, I've studied this word again and now I have more to add to it?
Mostly the second. It already had 61 little lessons in it.
It's a lot.
And I was putting the study questions in with the lessons. And even though each lesson is kind of short, once you put the study questions in and the answers, it starts getting longer and longer and longer.
Okay.
It becomes kind of voluminous. So I actually, I took out, mushed around a few. There now are 60 lessons. It's not 61. There are a couple of them I took out and a couple I put in. And then there were quite a few that I added quite other things to. And so, yes, there's quite a bit fresh and new, but yet it is kind of the same book, but it's also fresh and new with
But
new
I like
insights
the
and little things.
companion. I like the idea of a companion guide with it because I'm looking at mine and I don't have any discussion questions.
Okay, yes, right.
Oh.
Well, and we wrote first we wrote this book, and then our friend said, boy, we want to do a Bible study where we learn about the language and how if you know the language, it helps you understand your Bible. Well, then we wrote the companion Bible study. This actually, when I wrote this has a lot more data in it than the original book.
Okay.
You know, when I'm talking about Shema, which, hear and obey, well, here I give you a whole bunch more passages where it means this, where it means that. And then, and then I have a discussion. I'm showing you what it currently looks like. And then so I have questions for each chapter. And then at the end, I have actually a long discussion section where I'm discussing my own questions, because if you ask a question, if you don't give anybody any kind of answer, it has to be a really simple question.
Yes.
I hate Bible studies with stupidly simple questions.
Yes.
I think they're stupidly simple and just don't even. So I wrote halfway hard questions and I gave them really my own thoughts about them. And then people have a pretty good time because they can both have a little more time to think about it, see what I would say. And then they kind of sometimes they think of things that are better than I would think of. So anyhow, so we're putting it all together in a book, and it's just so it's not longer, but it will be a good Bible study for people.
Yeah. So. All right. So, because that first of all, just lets me know we need to remind listeners if they're looking for a Bible study, that would be a great starting place, because just understanding the language of the Bible.
That's right. Yes, that's
opens up so much more.
Yes, this was here. I should show you. Sorry, I'm giving a little promo to people who
works.
See how it is that each little lesson is only one page. So people kind of like the fact that there's a low commitment level, right? There were some people who said, I put this by my toilet so I can read it in the bathroom. But then we also had an Old Testament professor who assigned it to all of his first-year students.
Yeah.
So it's low or high commitment with how much energy you want to put in. But we also did this because we realized, we made them like little Pringles. It's like Pringles. As you eat one, you're like, I need to eat another.
I can't stop.
I need to eat another. And so Pringles. And so each little one is a little, I didn't realize that. As I say, an aha moment of a cultural insight that helps you understand your Bible better. And that was how I started there, because I knew that was also a way to on-ramp people who are like, I think I understand this, but I don't think I understand this.
Right.
So that's how we started. That was my first one, and we're doing it again.
I
So,
like it.
Yep.
So then obviously we always recommend you when we say people are starting, we're like, get Lois's books. All her books are good. Other than your own books, who would you recommend people start with?
well, I don't, ironically, I was sitting there thinking, where do I put that? Well, if you have any of my books, there's always long lists of bibliography at the back. But and then if people order books from my website, I always include my little sheet of recommended resources. Is this
Okay.
backwards, or can you see
Yep.
it?
No, we see it. Our Father Abraham.
Recommended resources on Jesus in context, and so these are books that are my next go-tos. New Light on the Difficult Words of Jesus is actually another one that my ministry produced. David Biven, as a scholar, he has been a father to me in scholarship, because he taught at JUC many years ago, a little while. Many of the professors from JUC are ones that I've studied with or worked with or whatever. And so, but he worked with a group of Jewish scholars who they won super top awards on first century Judaism. And then they got interested in talking about reading the synoptic gospels and Jesus in light of Jewish material. And so New Light on the Difficult Words of Jesus, I also have, I don't have it, but yes, I do. There we go. Look.
Okay. Yep.
He wrote a journal called Jerusalem Perspective, which is still online. But Bruce and I asked him if we could write a book, and he said, sure. Of his own articles, I could pick my favorites and then mush them into a book. And that's what so I'm the one who chose the articles. These are my favorites. And in fact, like some of the most important stuff is about what is a rabbi? What was Jesus' education about? I got it from him. And he got it from his Jewish scholars. And so he's a Christian. He grew up in Oklahoma. Now he lives in Jerusalem with his wife. But so Jesus' education, and what does it mean to be a rabbi, and what does it mean to be a disciple? When he talks about being disciples, they actually knew what it meant already, because it talks about that you've heard of Jewish scholars talking about that. So this is it's really kind of the background of what I write about. It's a little bit a notch up. So that would be a first one, along with Marvin Wilson's book, Our Father Abraham. And then Jesus the Jewish Theologian, The Gospel According to Moses. If a person orders a book from my store, on one side I have my books, on the other side are just books that I recommend to keep reading if they want to keep reading. If they want to nerd.
I am going to put a link to your store in our show notes so that everyone can go look.
Great.
Start
Wonderful.
with Lois and go from there.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel like this is what the Lord has called me to do. I am not married. Especially when I talk to my African friends, to them it's like, what? Are you nuts? they don't say it quite like that, but that's it, just like in the biblical world, it's unthinkable to never marry. What? So, but I feel like the Lord gave me this, and this is what I do. So, I say my books are my babies. And they're rectangular, so they're hard to give birth to. So,
so do you have a favorite then?
Do you have a favorite baby of yours?
It depends on the day.
Yeah, that would be it. That's it. That would be it. That's right. So that's right. Yeah.
So
depends on the day.
What's one of your favorite? If you get I get to introduce people to the Jewishness of Jesus,
Yeah.
What's your favorite go-to aha exciting moment for them?
Okay. Well, here's one that I find it's a delight that I love to, and I got it from David Biven.
Mhm.
So do I have in there? But it's here. I'll pull out. It's in my Walking in the
Okay.
Dust of Rabbi Jesus. There's this odd little puzzler in the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus, he says, the Sermon on the Mount has all these little kind of one-liners that's hard for us to figure out. It just feels like just random sayings, random. We don't get how they all fit together, or if they are supposed to even fit together. Maybe they're just random and we don't even have to. Well, part of it, he says the eye is the lamp of the body. If your eye, and I'm looking at the ESV, if your eye is healthy, your body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your body will be full of darkness. If the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? So there's no end of pious sermons that have been written about it, about your eye is your heavenly outlook. Your eye is your, I don't know. And the thing is that people have been guessing and guessing and guessing, and many people have no idea that he both having in Greek it says ophthalmos poneros, that means a bad eye. That is paralleled with a good eye, and a good eye and a bad eye are idioms. They're Jewish idioms. Every language has idioms, and people don't. We have idioms. Kick the bucket. You need to know the culture. You can't say buckets, kick. I'll study what buckets are and kicking, and then I'll figure out the true meaning of that. If I understand buckets better and kicking, then I'll understand it. No, you won't. And so you find these proverbs. Whoever has a good eye will be blessed because he shares his bread with the poor. Do not eat the bread of a bad eye, because he's watching everything you eat and begrudging you all your delicacies. So he's a good eye is a person who is generous with their money. And a bad eye is somebody who's stingy with their money. And it's actually kind of a theological point, is when you're always kind of stingy, you have no compassion on others, and it's like your eyes are only at your own self. You're turned inward on yourself. And so what's really cool about understanding that idiom is that it helps you understand that, the eye, if your eye is good, if you're a generous person, your life will be full of light because you're going to be generous and loving to other people. If your eye is bad, meaning you're a stingy person, your whole life is going to be stingy. And you're going to, because you don't believe as God is taking care of you, and you're sitting there worrying about your stuff all the time. And the cool thing about this is that, you could say, well, I don't know if that's really what this passage is about. Well, look at the line before it. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, but lay up treasures in heaven. There's something it's not all about the money. And then the line right after this line, that's the I line, is Matthew 6:22. The line right after it is, no one can serve two masters. You cannot serve both God and mammon, money. So what's cool is that once you understand the middle line and those idioms, all of a sudden you have a whole little sermonette that all fits together. It all works together. It's one big long text that Jesus is teaching about, and it's almost like novel scripture. You didn't even know about it. And here Jesus is teaching you something that you didn't even realize was there. So I like that one a lot because it glues together my Bible. It
Right?
tells me something that's important to Jesus that I better change. Gives me a good lesson for living. And then it reminds me I need to know his culture.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's-
It does a
There you go.
lot in one little section.
Yeah. And people realize, oh, I didn't realize that idioms might be a thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes people say, oh, yeah, I can see that you can't guess that.
Mhm.
They're if you're a linguistic nerd, idioms are, figures of speech.
Mhm.
They're little words, phrases. They say you can have transparent idioms are ones that are kind of obvious but they're also opaque idioms.
Mhm.
And kick the bucket is an
Uh-huh.
opaque one. You can't tell from the words what it means. Raining cats and dogs.
Mhm.
I don't know what cats and dogs are. It means it's really raining. So it's and Hebrew because it has and English compared to many languages, English has a much larger word base than other
Mhm.
languages. Because it has Germanic and Romance languages put together. And so we don't realize that other languages have to rely more on phrases and idioms to express meanings
Mhm.
than English has in single words. That's part of why they have so many. So that's what's going on.
Because I feel like you have a whole blog post or article on broad brushes, and
Yeah,
Hebrew
that's
is
right.
the broad brush.
That's right. That's right. Well, and some of my professor friends are like, what do you mean? It's not like they're primitive. No. And it's, like the Hebrew, there are only, let's see, 8,000 words. When you talk about biblical Hebrew, you're talking about all the Hebrew words in the Bible. Of course, not every Hebrew word was used in the Bible. The word for cat, even though I have a cat, and there were cats in biblical times, there's no word for cat in the Bible. And so biblical Hebrew is bigger. Hebrew is bigger than that, but 8,000 words is a fairly small vocabulary.
Yeah.
Actually, but there are actually a lot of modern languages still work like that, and especially languages that are not written because they don't hang on to their archaic words. They tend to lose archaic words over time. But like I'm Norwegian, Norwegian is much smaller. French is about half the vocabulary of what English is. But and then my African friends, they say, yes, it makes it so that we have to be smarter than you because we have to express things and infer things from how we're saying it. We can't just use every single other word in the dictionary that we just don't have it. We have to be smart. You're just dumb. They don't say it that way, but that was their comment. It said it makes it so you can be simple because you have extra words. So that's their comment. So a lot of languages are actually smaller, but Hebrew especially, you hear that because you hear every word. I'm nerding out with you.
Go for it.
There you go. Words have what we call a semantic range, is that one word has a multiple of meanings, that they in each language. In different languages, those semantic ranges can be different. I took French when I was in high school, and I don't need to teach you too much French, but in English, we can say, I know you, Erica. I know you, Veronica. I know you as friends. And I know Lois's books. You can know information, you can know people. In French, when you're talking about information, you say, je sais, I know. When you're talking about people, you say, je connais. Which is, I am familiar with. I know them as a friend. Our word know has a wider connotation. It has a wider semantic range. it doesn't mean that we're always trying confused. Ooh, and we're not thinking broader thoughts about, I know this book, I'm familiar and I love this book, like I know this person. But every language has different sets of meanings that can be associated with a word. And Hebrew tends to have very wide number of ideas associated with a single word, compared to English, where we'll separate a whole bunch of things out. And sometimes you read a Hebrew. What's interesting, especially, is when you can look at where there are very wooden translations. Actually, the King James is a very wooden translation, and they'll try to be wooden. And there are some points where, like, the Hebrew word is so far away from an English meaning, we're just going to give up, and we're going to give you a totally different meaning. And then it's very interesting. You're like, oh, look at that. Look at how you, like, yareh. Yareh means to fear. It says, you shall, lots of places talking about the fear of the Lord. Like, because God's scary and bad. Ooh, scary. Well, it also says, you shall fear your mother and father. It also says, you shall fear my sanctuary, and so what they really mean is revere. You shall show reverence. And then you hear in the New Testament, you hear about God-fearers. And there are places where you don't quite hear that they're actually changing it. It will talk about let's see. I wish I knew it's an obscure place in the Hebrew Bible where it talks about that in Israel, when the Israelites came back and they were worshiping God, and they also had foreigners among them, and they didn't know how to worship God properly.
Yeah.
Right. And so there were lions attacking them. Yep. And what they needed, they said, somebody please teach us the fear of the Lord. And the word fear there is actually about worshiping God. We need to revere God correctly. And they're really talking about worshiping him. They're not talking about their inner thoughts at all, or their emotions. They're talking about the sanctuary worship, because to revere God is to offer up sacrifices correctly. And that, because that word is so broad that it means worship at some point. So God-fearers in the New Testament totally fits. You see, but you see that the word yareh is so broad that it goes past our own understanding of it. And we need to understand that sometimes yareh is actually about worship, and about that, rather than it can be about being afraid. It can be about being respectful, but it can even be about worship and obedience instead. So isn't that fun? I love this stuff.
That is fun. It is fun. But I'm looking at the time going, it goes so fast.
I do. I talk so much. I know.
No, it's been so good, because to me, as we're wrapping up the podcast, I'm hoping if listeners aren't familiar with you, they now go, oh, here's a treasure trove of books and an author and your website with your articles, because you're just opening up so much more and going, there's so much more that I can dig into.
That's right. So
and I love your idea of reading with an insider.
That's right. We're working on it. Pray for me. It's every books are tough. You try to find the exact words. You remember when you were in college and you had to write papers and you felt like, oh no, what is my professor? Well, it's hard not to be like that, because they're like, what are my readers you're gonna grump at me if I say this, and so but no, it's fun. So my friend here, I'll show you a picture. So she's from Uganda, which is within 100 miles from the equator. It is tropical. It's like paradise there. It's between 65 and 80 every day of the year. But she came and stayed with me for a couple of months, and she loves shoveling. And so every time she came to seminary here, and she liked snow. And so she would pray for snow. And when it snowed a lot, we blamed her. We said, Millie, it's because the Lord answered your prayers. So she and I had a great time. that was just, and she left just a couple weeks ago, and so
I was
now
gonna
it's
say,
fresh.
has she been in Michigan this winter? This is why we have
Yes,
so much
this
snow?
winter, this was why she was the problem. It was
Okay.
her. She wanted all the, and then, a week and a half ago, we had this nice warm period.
Yes.
She said, I am taking winter with me, and your winter will be done now. I'm like, I don't think so, Billy, but she was happy to take her to, so anyhow, the point being, we've been studying together a long time, and Lord willing, you're working on that right now, and it will be out in a while. And if you want to know, I have written several articles as I've gone along about cool things that we've learned together. And if you can tell your readers and listeners that they can sign up on my email list, and I am very much not a spammer. I tell people, if you want to not ever hear from me, get on my email list. About every 3 weeks after you first put your name on my list, either the EngediResourceCenter.com or ourRabbiJesus.com. OurRabbiJesus.com.
I will put,
You
for
put
our
'em up there.
listeners, I'm going to put that all in the show notes because
That's
sometimes people listening while they're on a walk, if they follow us on social media, our Context and Color Facebook group, when you put up a new article, Lois, I'm always like sharing it to the group.
Okay, I know,
There you go.
and I need to do it more often. I do put up on my each year my Engedi articles, and Engedi is this beautiful oasis in Israel. You guys know that. You know, on social media, I put up links to my older articles once every week too. So that if people are on Facebook, they can do that. But if they want to hear about new stuff, they need to get on my email list, which is, as I said, I don't spam. I really don't spam. I'm not like that. So
that's good. That's good to know. But that lets us know that we can just be praying for you as you have your revision of your listening to the language of the Bible coming out in the fall. And then a year later, what I'm really excited for, your soon to be named, but the one about the insider view.
The inside, reading the Bible as an insider. She has all sorts of really cool perspectives that she reads many texts very differently than the way we do. And she a lot of the hardest stuff, things that bothers us, sacrifices, curses, imprecatory psalms. What on earth? Oh golly, she can explain all that to you. She wanted me to write I know we're almost done. She wanted us to name the book Cruel Scriptures. So she just talked about the cruel scriptures. I think that's going to be one section. We're going to have some chapters on cruel scriptures and how she explains them differently than we do.
Wow, that would be. I am looking forward to this book.
Good. Okay. Good. I'm glad.
I just want to say thank you so much for coming. Like I say, you've been my bucket list. I can
Yay.
We could end the podcast forever.
Oh golly.
I made it.
Oh golly. Okay. There are more fun people that are good too. So yes.
Not on my list.
There you go.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lois.